Okay, we should be recording. Hello and good morning to everyone. Those with me live, thank you so much for taking time out of your weekend. I can't believe we are on our final stretch of the year. And if you're watching this on replay, welcome as well. Hi, Janice. Okay, so I thought we could do our final training of the year and do some connections from capital letters. So I thought it would be a great way to put things together. Some of you have kind of maybe taken a more intermediate workshop with me by at this point, but regardless, it's always a great refresher or a great time to ask me some questions about how and when to connect capital letters to the next letter, so a lowercase. And I want you to go ahead and in the chat, give me your questions or suggestions. And if not, I'll just go through the alphabet and point out some tips or some suggestions on what I would do in certain situations because it can be kind of tricky. So welcome again to those of you jumping in now. And if you're watching this on the replay, I'm just excited for you to still be able to take advantage of these lessons. So here I have an alphabet in a copper plate style. And what you'll notice about some of these capitals is you can tell where the capital lends itself to an easy connection. So what I mean by that is take a look, let's go through these. So see anywhere where the capital is ending in an exit stroke toward that waistline in this way, that makes it really easy to connect to your next letter. With the B, it's a little trickier because it's curling inward. You can still go through, but usually you can keep that B alone and then your next letter would be separate. The C tends to, you want to keep that separate from your next letter. D is separate. So see what I'm doing? I'm kind of keeping an eye on where is that final exit stroke. It's not until we get to H here that this lends itself to the next letter. I is one that you'll see we want to for sure keep that separate from our next letter. And because of this awkward like hanging stroke, it leaves a lot of blank space at the bottom. So we'll do examples of where you want to start your next letter with an entrance stroke, and sometimes you can leave it off. So it's optional. So J has an exit stroke. And this is another reminder when you are practicing your basic strokes, your letters, whether they're capital or lowercase, it's always a great practice to end that stroke fully. So what I mean is when you're finished with that stroke, end it at the waistline. Don't stop here at the baseline. Don't stop halfway. In practice, finish up at the waistline because it gives you that full range of the stroke to then you can always modify it from there. Okay, so L comes up to our waistline. M does, but N doesn't. See how we end with this hairline stroke? So we want to keep that alone, and then we would continue our word separately. The O is separate, P is separate. P has the same situation like the I. See how it has a lot of empty space hanging below? It's like this top, it's top heavy with all the strokes on the top, and then we have nothing at the bottom here. So usually if I have a P, I like to start my next letter with an entrance stroke because it fills this empty space. Okay, so moving along, Q, we'll leave that separate from the connection. R is a good one to connect from because of that exit. S is one to keep separate. T keep separate. U is a good connection. Okay, V, just like with our N, we want to keep this separate because of that hairline. And another reason to keep these separate or just keeping in mind, we want to make sure it's readable. If we force this connection, it could turn the letter or the word into something that we didn't intend to. So just that's another reason that we want to maintain the look of that first letter. X is a good one to connect from. Y, we want to keep separate. And Z is a good one to connect to. Okay, So I'll go ahead and come up with some examples, but if you can let me know in the chat any names, words, tricky ones that we can go over together, then that would be awesome. So I could address those here. For starters, let's go over, because it's really sticking out in my mind, the P and the I. So these capitals that have that hanging space that I'm talking about, okay? So for our letter I, we have our capital stem, and then we have a terminal dot. So we come up off of the baseline and we curl in. And let me try to zoom in just a little here, bring you closer. And then we come back and trace our hairline and turn with a horizontal loop, and then close it on the left and then come up on the right. Okay, so that is just a standard copperplate letter I. Okay, there's modern variations, of course. We're just sticking to copperplate here. So look at this empty space. Okay, if I don't put an entrance stroke, so let's think of like a word like, now I'm blanking out. Oh, I know, like Italy is a good one. So if I have my T here, and then I have my A, not that it's a name, but a place, my L. Okay. So then if I leave off my entrance stroke, look how empty this space is. It really stands out. See that empty space? Because without those lines, see how plain it is? So I tend to start that next letter with an entrance stroke here. See how it fills it just a little, so your I doesn't have so much empty space and the word looks more put together. Okay, so that's one tip. Just like with the letter I, we have the letter P. Okay, starts the same way, capital stem and our terminal dot. Then we're going to have a vertical loop here. And then we're going to close the loop on the right. And then if I had a name like Pam, right? So if I don't have that entrance stroke, it's really empty. It can still work, because if I keep my letter close enough, it still looks like you could still read that as Pam. It doesn't look like it's two separate. But that entrance stroke is a very subtle and easy way to fill that space. So now it's all together. Okay. So some situations where you can leave off the entrance stroke, for example, let's say I have the name like Gabby. Okay, I'm looking at my alphabet here on the side. So if I have a letter G, I'm going to do a horizontal loop and then a small C, then a small capital stem with a terminal dot. So if I have my G here, I don't have to use an entrance stroke. And in fact, I prefer to leave it off, because we have this heavy, thick stroke here. So that fills that space. Whereas with our P, we didn't have that heavy stroke filling up that empty space. So with my G here, if I'm doing the word Gabby, then I can just go into I can take off the entrance stroke and go straight into my letter A. So this way, it looks like all together. There is empty space here. One rule of thumb on how far away from that stroke to create that next letter, you can imagine if there was an entrance stroke, just about that width. Okay, if you do it too far, then the word doesn't look together. If you do it too close, then you're going to have this thick stroke. See the thick stroke of this G, and see the thick stroke of this A. See how that width is just a nice, it matches the sizing of my ovals and my other spaces. So if I put that too close together, it's going to be too cluttered. And so you want to envision an entrance stroke there. Now, should you put an entrance stroke, you want, here's a kind of a thought that I have. If you do add an entrance stroke, you don't want to connect them. I know that sounds funny because I just said keep the spacing, the width of your entrance stroke, but look what happens if I did connect them together. Okay. It may look fine, but we're not keeping, that's not the structure of this capital. The way this capital should be made is we finish that capital stem and the terminal dot ends here, and then it's supposed to stand alone. So if you do feel the need to have an entrance stroke just to start off your oval there, I would shorten it just ever so slightly so it's not touching. Okay, so keep that slightly separated. Okay, so I have some examples here. Let me see if I can pull them up. And actually, oh, I don't know how to turn, it's sideways. I was going to share my screen with you. I thought it would be neat for me to practice sharing my screen on Zoom in case, you know, I have examples to show you. So let's see. It's just my Finder window. Hopefully you can see that. Oh, you know what? Now you see my whole, that's not exactly what I wanted to share. Let's stop the share. Sorry, I am trying to figure out how to open this PDF. So I have this PDF that is, that has a lot of examples, and I created it for the intermediate workshop I just did. So while that's waiting to open, let's see if I can do another example in the meantime. Oh, here we go. Okay, it opened. So let me share. There we are. So hopefully you can see that. But the problem is when I get to the page I want to, it's actually like this. See how it's portrait? I don't know how to turn it. Oh, actually, let's see. When view, rotate. There we go. Okay, guys can see that. So there's some flourishing going on here too. I hope you can see my cursor. But see here in the first letter, Peg, our first name. So I have that entrance right here in that E. So it fills the space just slightly. But for B, I left that separated because it just looks, you know, it looks fine. We have this thick stroke from our B, and we don't need to necessarily add an entrance stroke. You would just want to make sure they don't touch. Okay. Here in the F, I put a small entrance stroke there. And then in these other words like Utah here, the exit from the U goes into the T. So it just lends itself easily into that T. So for the L, look at this name here on the fourth row down, Lana. On a standard L, I would finish up at the waistline, and you could you could lend itself, it lends itself into that A, but because I chose to flourish it, I brought that final stroke down below and I turned it into itself to flourish. And then because of that, now I had to connect it separately. So there is no connection. So I used an entrance stroke and then just wrote out the rest of the word. Okay, let's see if we can do. Okay, here's more examples. There's your letter I. So we keep the I separate, and then the N is just standalone. letter N here. This is an important one because you want to keep that N readable. And so we're going to keep that hairline separate from the A, from the next letter, so on and so forth. Okay. So I will stop sharing that. I just wanted to share some other examples and then we can keep going here. Okay. All right. So are there any there that you want me to demonstrate? If not, I can just keep going. I'm just going to keep going down my examples, my alphabet here, pointing out some tricky ones. Let's do that letter N because I feel like we can troubleshoot the letter N as well. So I will keep an eye out or just feel free to, throw it out there. Okay. So for the letter N, one of the things that in order to keep that letter looking readable is you want to make sure that you have your hairline starting at the baseline and we come up onto the 55, onto our slant line. And then that next stroke we put there, it starts at a hairline, but we're going to add pressure and then come back to a hairline. Okay. And then so this is pretty vertical if you look at how it sits, but it's not exactly vertical. So one way to eyeball where to place that exit of that capital stem, if you were to take a ruler, for example, if I have this ruler here and I were to see how it hits hits my baseline. Now I can't really tell if that's straight. See how this stroke is to the left of that line? What I want to draw is one that's more like this. So it sits to the left. Okay, so this would be exactly vertical, but we're ending that stroke slightly to the left. Okay, so that's one troubleshooting tip to make sure that that middle stroke is placed correctly. Then from that point, we're going to bring our hairline, continue onto the slant line again because we want our ending stroke to be parallel to our first stroke. So as I come out of here, I'm going to keep my eye on this stroke and make sure they're parallel. And then after I pass that first ascender, then I can curve to the right. You can either stop here or you can go much higher. Or like you saw with that example, I flourish this inward to cross that T, but we'll just leave this simple for now and finish to the right. And then you can come back in here with a terminal dot. Okay, so there's our N. And then depending on our next letter, so if it's an A or an I, let's do an I, like the name Nicole, because I have this hairline that takes up a lot of this, my vertical space here, I can go ahead and just start with my I. Okay. If I want to add an entrance stroke, then I can go ahead and do one very subtly. And I wouldn't want to touch this letter because then it's just messing with the look of that N. We want it to stand alone. So if I'm going to put an entrance stroke, I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to come slightly to the right here. And it's a very tiny entrance stroke. Okay, so what other letters could we do? Let's see. I'll go ahead and do the V because it's very similar to the letter N. So I want to demonstrate the letter V for you there. So letter V, there's different ways to lead into that first stroke. I'm going to start by creating that modified capital stem that you see from the N. So this is the same stroke as this middle one here. And then just like with the capital N, I'm going to bring out that hairline onto the 55 here and then curve around. So I did that to show you the main part of the V. I want to use a pencil and give you a couple of different ways to enter this V. So one simple way is just a very simple horizontal stroke that you can start in the middle of your second and first ascender lines, and it would look like this. So see how it's just a hairline, and I have a slight curve above and below because you want to envision a very small oval, horizontal oval here, and a small horizontal oval here. So if you can envision two ovals that have an axis that is parallel to your baseline like this, that will help you envision how to create that curve. See this here? Because what you don't want is you don't want it to be too circular like this. So that's very circular here. Okay. And you don't want it too flat. Like if I just had a curve here and then I went into it like this, it just gets very flat on this side. It's certainly a style. I've seen that style around, okay? But for to stay within the copper plate spirit, like the very curved and oval nature, we would have this horizontal curve, okay? Another entrance, you can do a compound curve, but that's a little extended. So remember with our lowercase compound curve, we start at the baseline, we come up to our waistline, we have heavy pressure in the middle here, and then we come up with a hairline. So let's place that here, but we're going to extend the first part a little further out and extend that exit a little further out. See the difference there? So I'm going to start a little further here, bring that up and around, but then the thick shade of my compound curve will be on my slant, and then my exit here will come out with a hairline. So this part here will be heavy, but just like we remember, we're going to keep it at a hairline at the curve and a hairline at the curve here. The thick part, the weight of our shade is only here in the middle, and that shade is resting on our slant line. But see how it's extended? So I brought this hairline further out, whereas a regular compound curve would be a little more in here. Okay, so that's another entrance into the V. We can also do a combination of a vertical loop here and then into a compound curve. This has been a really fun one for me to practice. So see how I have a vertical loop? So this loop sits almost on our slant. So if I were to put an oval here, if I were to envision that oval, it's slightly off of my slant, but it's very close. And then I curve around into a compound curve. So this shade would be on my slant. And then my hairline out. And you can even curve that to the right a little to connect to your V. And then you finish the rest of the V. So see how fun that is, like having in your toolbox different entrances into the V. So you don't always have to do the same thing, but you can just keep to the ones that you're comfortable with, but I just want to show you a couple of options. Oh, I thought of one more here. It's a horizontal loop. And that would look like this. So if I bring out my oval here to the right and I have a hairline entrance into my stroke. And this is actually a really great drill for you if you want to practice this, where you create the main part of the letter, but leave off that entrance so you can play around with different ways to enter your letter. So this horizontal loop, actually, one of my favorite ways to flourish this letter, after I do this horizontal loop, then I create this stroke here. I bring out my hairline really high and I have a horizontal loop here, and that kind of mirrors this loop, and I love doing something like that. Bonus points if you have a letter like violet, or like a word like violet where you have a T, you could even cross that T. Otherwise, be careful if you have letters that come up, like if you had an L or an H somewhere here, then that might hit it. So this is really good for a word, for a name or place or word that has all lowercase or maybe some descenders, but nothing that goes into the ascending space. So like a name like Vanessa would be really good. So I can put Vanessa here. So see how nothing is hitting the top? So then that makes this really nice and gives it space to be, right? To exist and not run into anything. So that's one of my favorite ways to do the letter V. I'm glad you find it helpful. Thanks for letting me know. Let's look what other letters we could try. Let's do the X. Oh my goodness, the X is tricky. We know a couple of Xaviers, at least two. I know that name's pretty popular, but it's so hard to write. I even know a Zyla. Okay, I don't know her personally. I follow her parents on Instagram. They're singers that I really enjoy. Okay, for the letter X, we're going to have a vertical loop here. And we're going to come all the way around and then add heavy pressure, but then come back to a hairline, hit the baseline and come up slightly and add a terminal dot. And then you're going to create what looks like a C shape, but just hairline. So using my, I swirl my pen, I hover my pen around and I imagine I'm creating an oval. That helps me sometimes. And I've been giving it a term. I've been calling it the airplane move. Like it's like a verb now. So I'm going to airplane in the tip of my pen and then touch down here. And then I'm going to hit the shade of my first stroke, but not overlap it. So I'm imagining an oval here, and then I'm going to come up from the baseline and hit my waistline here. So see how that looks like a C, but there's no shade, there's no weight. I'm not going to press down. I'm going to keep it light and on the tip of my pen the whole way. Then you can come back in and trace the top and create a terminal dot that matches this here. So see how that's just the reverse. I'm spiraling inward, creating a little circle and filling it in. Okay, so for the name Xavier, now that I think about it, I should have left this halfway here because we're connecting to a rounded stroke. Remember when we connect to a rounded stroke, we need to trim off a little bit of that entrance. So we're going to, I'll try to make it work here. There we go. So see how I overlap just enough to cover that beginning part. And then we'll write the rest of our name. Xavier. Okay. And to push you a step further, if you want to start practicing flourishing, you can take those exits of your capitals and one way to do that is you can bring it lower, just like you saw me do with I have to refer back to my examples. I did that with the L. Okay. So what that looked like was I brought this lower and then I used this empty space below. You could stop here. And then see how it is just too busy. So I would take off that entrance stroke, or I would just shorten it and I would just start maybe right here. So I would leave a small space between those letters, okay? You can erase that. That's why flourishing is good with a pencil, or if you have tracing paper, you can place it on top. You can extend, you could do the same thing, and after you curve around, you can bring that loop back up into itself. That's what I did with the L there. Okay, but this part here was a little flat. I've been needing to practice that curve into my X. There we go. Another one we could do, let's see, we could, this is very elaborate, but another example is bringing this down below, horizontal loop here, and you could actually bring a horizontal loop to the side. I don't know what you think about that. It's a little extra, but I think it would work well as long as you would fix that entrance. So make sure there's a little space here or just leave it off completely. I might even bring that word, the rest of that name a little closer, because then you'll have all of this empty space here that you may want to close up slightly. Okay. All right, maybe we can squeeze in one more name. I'm looking at my letters. I've been loving the letter C. I'm not biased at all. It's just the beginning letter of our last baby that we named. Okay, so one thing to help you with the letter C is to envision an oval shape here. And I would even do this on my own. So draw an oval here. And I have a sheet that, you know, I'm going to make a note. When I send out this replay, I'll give you some resources. I'm going to include an oval sheet that I created for the beginner course, because what you can do is, say I have my ovals here, you can place tracing paper or you can write directly on there if you print it out, but it gives you a nice guide to then place your letters inside of that oval or use it in whatever way that helps you guide the shape of your letters, okay? So I'll include the oval sheet. I also want to share, I just love sharing any tips. There's a gal on Instagram, I don't know her personally, but her name's Irene. I'm going to share a flourishing sheet that she sent. I'll give you her link. You have to give her your email so she can send it to you. But how cool is this? Now I have to find it. So she created these 16 types of uppercase flourishing examples. Okay, and I've been just obsessed with it because look at all these examples she gives of letters. I printed the whole thing. It's a free download. So we're on the letter C, right? So I take her example as inspiration, which is funny. Her Instagram is actually Irene Inspiration. And it's just good ideas. So I'm used to doing your standard copper plate C, and then you can add on to that. You can really extend the entrance, add a small loop. You can exit and flourish the exit. And there's some really extravagant ways that I haven't even given a try, but would be definitely fun to experiment with. So the one that I will do, back down lower here. I've been loving lately this version. So you have to do it all in one motion, which can get kind of tricky. So you would have a horizontal loop here, and then you go into your C. There's your heaviest part of your shade. Your shade here will be the heaviest thickness, the weight. Then back to a hairline, and then usually you would end here and curl inward. But instead, we're going to go through, staying at a hairline, and then bringing that stroke out and around. Okay, so the tricky part to keeping this readable, you can tell, right? It's very loaded with a lot of strokes going everywhere. The key is to keep your shade on this main part of the letter, but keeping the rest as a hairline. If you do add a little shade, you can add a secondary shade to this stroke here into this area, but you don't want it to be as heavy as this main C, because then it's going to be too thick and distract from the main letter. Or you can end here with a secondary shade as well, but just, you know, same idea, not too thick to distract from the main letter. Keep all of this hairline, and then we can write our names. So our baby's name is Carissa. And fun fact, so I really liked this name from the singing group that I mentioned earlier. It's a duo, it's a husband and wife, and they go by Us the Duo. And then they had a baby and they named her Zyla. And that's where that X name I was mentioning earlier is from. But the wife's name is Carissa, and that's where I got the baby's name. So fun facts about where I got that name. A lot of folks that we tell what the name is think that it's with a K, but I just really liked it with a C. Okay. And why don't we do one more? You know what? I'm going to experiment with you. Let me look at Irene's sample here. I'm going to try. Okay, here's one way to flourish after you've made the main letter. So we're going to start at the second ascender here, and don't do the horizontal loop, because what's going to happen is we'll flourish it with a different entrance. Okay, so I'll start here at the top. Here's my C, then I'll keep the rest simple. See how I put a secondary shade here? It's very slight and subtle, but I did add some weight, so it's thicker than my hairline, but it's not as thick as my main shade there. Then I'm going to come back and trace here, and then I'm going to curve to the left, and just with a hairline, I'm going to keep all of this at a hairline. So that's one fun way to flourish the entrance. And I think that's easier to do if you start here. I'll put a little arrow, because if you start here, you can do it, but I don't know. For me, I find it easier to start back here and then kick out that hairline. And then when I envision these strokes, I'm envisioning an oval here, and I'm envisioning an oval here. So then I find it easier to go into that stroke afterward versus starting with it. But you could, I guess if you practiced it enough, you could start here. And then I would just have the rest of my name. So let's do, how about Carrie for a different name? Oh, it's just Carissa without the rest. But I do work with a gal named Carrie. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, I would love for you to let me know by replying to my follow-up email that I'm going to send out. Hi, everyone. So still in my PJs because it's Christmas, the day after Christmas. And that's all I have today. So I will, let's see who joined us. I'll put our gallery view. Had a few more people, Melinda, Inez, Holly. I'm starting to expand our monthly training group by every time I host a new workshop, I'm going to be inviting those folks into this training because it's just this ongoing monthly check-in that I love having with you all. So please keep joining in, and your questions and requests are always welcome. You can always reply. Once you see that notice go out for training, just hit reply and you can send me requests or questions. I've even had some folks send some work to be marked up. Janice, was that you? I don't know who the last one I have on my to-do list to send some feedback. And so I'm going to start asking if it's okay to share that with the rest of the group, because I think everyone can enjoy and benefit from seeing me mark up someone else's work. It's nice to see, it's nice to see how I write things, but then it's really helpful to come from the student perspective. And then I'll mark up areas to improve, focus on, and throw in some drills that you could do to improve your script. So I will end our training for today. I will see you all in the new year, 2021. I don't have much to say that hasn't been said already by others, that what a year, right? And hopefully we go into the next year with, on a better trajectory than we were in this year. There's been still a lot of good that has happened despite all of the unexpected. So I hope you are all well and safe, and I will see you next time. So look forward to a follow-up email. and then some exciting updates to the intermediate course. I don't have much today to share today, except that I am working on filming ever so slowly. I'm building that course so it's ready for you all. So please keep an eye out, and I will see you next month, if not sooner. Um, I've been kind of away from Instagram because life just really got the best of me with all the kids, the holidays. I always overplan and underestimate how much time I have. I think a lot of you might be able to relate to me. Okay, Happy New Year, everyone. It was great to see you and chat. If you are looking for the replay, I will send that out, and I'll also send out that oval sheet I mentioned and the link to Irene's flourishing sheet. I think that's an awesome resource, and others too that I can think of. I'll be sharing those. Happy New Year. I'll see you later. Bye, everyone.